Russia?
I'm going to be in Russia.
Oh,
I guess I hope it's a pleasant place to be. The only pleasant place about that is you could get a vodka for $3 instead of 11. At least used to be $3. I don't know how much it is right now.
where in Russia are you?
I'm going to be in Moscow.
Oh,
Yeah, we got to do something. There's a certain project that Chabad is doing, so I have to go. They need Persian-speaking rabbis. So I have
is
to.
it safer in that area versus others? Or?
Well, Moscow is far from Ukraine.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
So one of the things that they're doing, they're going to go to the city of Lubavitch. Could you believe that? That's where Chabad comes from, Lubavitch. There's like two burial places from, I think the third and the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe. I was there once. We're going to go visit it one more time also. Anyways, guys, let's go back. Sorry, it was like very, very hectic week. We also have a couple announcements to make afterwards. But one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody, as you know, the Torah has this week's portion, but it has a lot of commandments. So we're going to go through a couple of them. One of the things that Torah talks about is, let's say if you buy a house, you build a house, whatever the case is, if your roof is flat, it's not the whatever normal roofs that we have in California that are slanted, but if it's a flat roof, so there's a commandment that you have to make a maike, which means a rail around the roof. And the Torah says it's a kitivne bait chodash, when you buy a new house, you build a new house. So it says tasa maike legagecha, you have to make like a railing, a fence on the roof. So what's the reason? So it says the reason is because you don't want somebody to fall from your roof and die. So it says ki yipol velotasim damim bevetecha. Don't cause any blood to fall into your house. Why? Because ki yipol anofel. Because the guy that is destined to fall is going to fall from your roof. Now, what does it mean that a guy who's destined to fall is going to fall from your roof? It should have said a person is going to fall. So it says a guy that's destined to fall is going to fall down. So Rashi over there says that really this guy was going to die anyways, whether it was on your roof or not on your roof. But again, the Torah says, why should be the one that brings, something negative to your house? There's a very interesting statement that, a rabbi say that only through a guilty person something negative will happen. Somebody who has merits, only good things will happen through him. So therefore, it says there isn't, because I didn't put a fence, so he came out to be a guilty person. So then, even if this guy is supposed to die, it's going to fall through my house, through my roof. So put a fence that you shouldn't be that person. That's a simple meaning. Again, you don't have too many of these commandments in California because most of the Jewish homes that you have, they're slanted. You got some that are flat. So it has to be at least, 10 tvachim is like 10 handbreadths, so a guy doesn't fall. As we know, every part in the Torah has different levels, different ways of explaining it. This is the simple explanation. So one of the Kabbalists, his name was the Shalah HaKadosh. His real name was Rabbi Shayo Horowitz, was Ashkenazi rabbi. And he says actually this has a different meaning too. It says when you have a house, you should make a fence on the roof of your house. He wants to explain that roof resembles a person's arrogance. Like the roof is the top. So it shows on a person who's arrogant. So here the Torah says if somebody is very arrogant, he has to actually curb, like put a fence or a railing around the roof, meaning control your arrogance or cut it off. Why? Because yipol hanofel mimenu. Because arrogance is something that actually makes a person fall down from the highest level of spirituality. We always think that if a person does like a very, very terrible sin, so that distances him from God. Many times we feel if I'm a religious person, so it doesn't matter if I have good character traits or not. As long as I'm religious, I'm close to God. So there's actually some news that if somebody is very arrogant, arrogance is something that distances a person from God more than any other sin on the book. So here's the Torah telling us, whatever you might be arrogant. So the Torah says you got to curb that and destroy it. Now we got two types of arrogance. Sometimes the person is very haughty, very arrogant because he has money, because he's smart. These are like, physical things. So we understand, you know what? Okay, don't be arrogant. What if somebody is very arrogant because of spiritual things? He's a big wise person, a big Talmid Chacham, big rabbi. So is that like an arrogance of holiness? Is allowed to have it or not? What do you think? It's not me, it's the Bible that I know, it's the Torah that I know. Right? So there's actually a very interesting halacha. Where is the holiest place on earth? the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. You know, on the roof of the Beit HaMikdash, there was a fence too. There's a law. I mean, whatever. I don't know. Nobody went on the roof, but they used to have a fence on the roof. So here the Shalah explains, is the Kabbalist, that the Beit Hamikdash shows on the type of the roof of it, shows on the type of an arrogance that is from holiness. That means at least the guy thinks it's from holiness. He studies Torah. He knows a lot of spiritual things. Nevertheless, you have to curb that too. Nobody can go around and say, I'm God's gift in the world because I know so much. So no type of arrogance is good at all. And actually, the Gemara says if somebody is very arrogant, or if he's arrogant, it's almost similar to idol worship. What's the logic behind it? How does that deny God? If I'm an arrogant person, I'm denying God? I mean, seemingly it doesn't make any sense. Why would you think that arrogance is equal to idol worship? So one of the explanations that they give is, guys, idol worship, according to the Torah, is not that I deny God. What if somebody believes in God 100%? But it says that there's other powers besides God too. Like you have a king and you have second to the king. Someone says God is the greatest, but there's other powers also. So such a thing is considered to be idol worship according to Judaism also. What is the source for that? We always say it in our prayers that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, there's only one God. Anybody is familiar with the idea of Trinity? The Christians believe God has three parts, right? There's God, there's the Holy Spirit, and there's the child, the Son. That's actually considered to be like idol worship for us. Because we say within our prayers, God is one. You can't divide it into three. Besides the fact that it doesn't really make that much sense. If you're going to divide God into three parts, the original part, the first part has to stop somewhere for the second part to start. You got to say God stops here, the Holy Spirit starts here, and then ends here, and then the Son starts here. So then you're limiting God. I could say God ends here. So it really doesn't make any sense. But that's the idea of idol worship. If you believe there is any other power besides God, even if you believe there is only one God, but if you believe there is any other power, independent power, besides God, then that's idol worship according to Judaism. So if you really realize whatever we have is a blessing of God. If I'm healthy, it's a blessing that God gave me. We are smart, God gave us the wisdom. You make a lot of money at your work or whatever job that you have, it's actually a blessing of God. So what is there for me to be arrogant? If I'm arrogant, that means I'm giving the credit to myself. It's me who did it. It's not God. Yeah, God is a great being, but I'm also somebody. And I'm saying, imagine if somebody gives you millions of dollars of charity. They're going to say, what? Wow, I got charity $1 million. Nobody goes and boasts about it because it's not yours. It was the kindness of the other person that gave it to you. So if I really believe that whatever I have is from God, then not only that I shouldn't become arrogant, I have to be humble. If I become arrogant, that means I'm giving the credit to myself. I don't give the credit to God. It's me too. That's why it's equal to arrogance. Is that clear? Right? Actually, there's a very interesting story. I think I mentioned it one time in the synagogue. It was an interesting story. There was a guy that came to the Rebbe of Kotsk. Kotsk, I guess, is one of the cities in Europe. His name was Menachem Mendel. So he came and he says, Rabbi, I have a serious problem. I'm religious, but I'm very arrogant. Could you please teach me to become humble? So the rabbi says, yeah, sit down here. We're going to learn how to be humble. So anyways, the guy is sitting. A guy walks into the rabbi's office and he says, Rabbi, I have a problem. Me and my friend have a dispute regarding a halachic matter. We need your guidance. So the rabbi turns to the arrogant person and he says, can you solve their problem? So the guy says, Rabbi, I don't know any Jewish laws. I can't really solve it. So the rabbi solved it for them. A few minutes later, a couple hours later, whenever it was, somebody else walks in and he says, Rabbi, I want to open up a business, but I really don't know what's the right way. Can you advise me how to start my business? So the rabbi looks at this arrogant guy and he says, hey, could you help him how to start his business? I have no brain of business. I'm not business minded. I can't help him. Then later on, another guy comes and he says, Rabbi, I need money. Can you help me? I have to make a wedding for my child. So the rabbi turns to the arrogant guy and says, do you have money to give him? He says, Rabbi, I have no money to give him. So the rabbi turns to him and says, listen, Halacha, Jewish law, you don't know. Business mind, you don't have. Money, you don't have to give to somebody to help. So what do you have to be arrogant with? It was actually a true story that happened. If you look at ourselves, whatever we have, we're very, very limited. At the same time, everything is a blessing of God. So obviously, there's nothing to be arrogant about. So I'll be honest with you. It's not only between us and God. In any relationship, humility is something that brings people closer. Arrogance is something that destroys relationships. Whether they're two friends, two partners in business, definitely husband and wife, siblings. If you're a humble person, you always have a place for the other person's idea. You have a place to hear the guy. If you think you're elite, if I think I'm the elite guy, no, nobody has any right to tell me anything. So obviously I'm burning all my bridges. That's one explanation. If you have any questions, please do ask. That was one thing. But there's also, another. Any of the guys here are into Kiruv? You guys are part of JLIC, no, a lot of you guys. Part of JLIC is bring other people closer to God, correct? So the whole idea of a house that you put a rail is the idea that you don't want somebody to fall down. So now let's say if you want to bring somebody closer to God in any way, you have to do it in a humble way, not to feel arrogant that I know better than the other person. Here the Torah tells us that even when you're teaching somebody else, if he's going to feel that I feel so good, I'm so arrogant about teaching him, you might even turn him off from Judaism. You have to have really words coming out of the heart to have an effect on him. I'm going to just actually, now that we're talking about Kiruv a little bit, bringing people closer to Judaism. Have you ever seen in this generation there are like thousands of people coming back closer to Judaism? I'm serious. I'm religious for how many years now? I don't remember. 43 years at least. Like, there was a time when we were religious, they used to make fun of us. Like, some so, Rabbi, I was 14, 15. I feel so bad for your parents. You became religious. These days, actually, everybody is really open, to accept ideas of Judaism or whatever, spirituality. I'm not even people that are totally secular. They're very open to it. I just wanted to share a couple of stories with you that, deep down, every Jew is really open to the truth of God. They're really open. The problem is that, there's certain things that blocks that openness. But deep down, because every human being has a godly soul, he really can connect to God. But, it's like there's water under the ground. You have to actually dig deep, but eventually you're going to find water. There's just some dust that covers it up. So if you actually have to uncover, remove that dust, so the spirituality will shine. I want to share with you a couple stories. Story number one is actually in the 40s, I think, when the previous Lubavitch Rebbe came to America. Well, at that time, there was a Rabbi Levitin. He's not alive anymore. So the previous Rebbe asked him, I wanted to go to Chicago and visit this person. I think the previous Rebbe came to Chicago in the 1920s. And he had a couple, friends that he knew. And so I wanted to go visit him. So these people go to him. So this guy thinks that he came for money. So says, how much of money check do you want? So we're not here for money. So says, what are you here for? So says, you know what? We're like scribes. What does a scribe do? When you have a Sefer Torah, and sometimes, the Sefer Torah is erased, couple letters. So the job of a scribe is to actually fill it up. So there are some Jews, they forget about the Judaism, whatever it is, to come and fill up the letters. The erased letters we bring back. And anyways, the guy gave a donation, and they came to the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, and they told him what happened. So previous Rebbe told him, I wanted to go back and tell him, you made a mistake. He says, what is it? A Sefer Torah, you could erase the letters from the parchment. It says a Jew is not like the letters of a Sefer Torah that gets erased. They're like the letters of the tablets. On the two tablets, what's the difference? When you have an ink written on a parchment, there are two separate things. That's why the ink could get erased. On a tablet, the letters are actually engraved. You can't get rid of the letters. The only time that the letters cannot be seen if it's filled up with mud or dust. All you got to do is clear the dust, but the letters will shine. That's what every Jew is. That love to God, that love to truth is there. Just sometimes the dust covers it up, whatever distractions in the world makes us think the other way. but actually everybody is very, very deeply connected. There was actually a story. This happened many, many years ago. There was a guy that, this guy's name is Rabbi Blazinski. You're getting to story mode. I hope you guys don't get bored. We want to get to marriage parts very soon too, if you want to get married. But anyways, there was a story that I know this Rabbi Blazinski was walking with another rabbi. So a guy runs to them and says, Rabbi, I don't put on two pairs of tefillin. You guys are familiar with that? There's an argument how you write the tefillin. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. So according to every opinion, the other tefillin is not kosher. So people that want to really do it the best way, they have two pairs of tefillin. One is according to opinion of Rashi. The argument is, how do you put the parchments in the tefillin? It's not clear in the Torah. So there's an argument. So you do both. You do context. So it comes and says, I don't put on two pairs of tefillin. So they ask him, why not? He says, because I don't even put on one pair. This guy was not religious, obviously, and he was making fun of them. And he started asking, very, very deep questions. That, he showed that he doesn't believe in the truth of the Torah. And I'm saying all about these things. These guys were young people. And they say, you know what, you're talking to wrong guys. We're young. They were like young yeshiva boys. But he says, I have a father, Blazinski says, that he actually has a lot of experience. Why don't you come meet my father? Now, this guy's name was Rabbi Yitzchak Dumiel, or Schweiger was his name. So the father knew him. He was actually one of the lefty guys in the Israeli government. In the beginning of settlement of Israel. So, you had, like, for example, on the left, you had David Ben-Gurion. He was, I think, the first president, prime minister or something. And then you had Levi Eshkol. There was a couple of other guys. These were the politicians. And then you had the ideologists behind it. So this guy, Yitzchak Domil, was one of them. He was the ideologist behind this whole thing. So actually, he goes and sees Blazinski's father, and he says, you know what? I could study with you Torah every Shabbat from 6 to 9 in the morning. He says, okay, I'm going to come study. So they're studying, the entire winter goes by, and the guy doesn't change. He's coming every Saturday, he's learning with him, nothing changes. So the people of the synagogue tell him, how much are you wasting your time? The guy is not moving. So he wrote a letter to the Lubavitch Rebbe. The Rebbe tells him, continue learning, but do not mention anything to him about keeping mitzvot. Just learn the Torah with him. Don't tell him, did you put on tefillin today or not? So many times this Yitzchak Domil wanted to invite the rabbi to his house, but he says, sorry, I can't even drink anything in your house. I'm not going to come. So the entire winter they were learning. And then the rabbi of the city comes and tells Rabbi Blazinski, you know what happened? This guy came and he sold his chametz before Pesach. That's only what a lot of Jews don't even know about it. And then afterwards, after Passover, the guy comes to Rabbi Blazinski, this Yitzchak Domil, and he says, I made my house kosher. Now you could come and drink a cup of tea, and actually became a religious person. So here the Rabbi explains that really every Jew, because they have the godly soul, they have that yearning to be connected to God. The problem is because of the distractions that happen, so it's like, you have a lot of dust on a coal, so you don't see the burning fire. So it's dormant, but it's really there. And our job is just to try to uncover it. Honestly, by being a good person, sometimes it's just very easy, be kind to a person. You meet a guy in college, right? Invite him, get him a Coke. I don't mean Coke. I'm talking about the drinking Coke. There's many Jewish versions. You know what LSD is, right? Let's start davening. You know what pot is, right? Put on tefillin. That type of Coke comes in. You drink a cup of Coke. Then you bring him closer to God. That's the way it is. So that was one story that I wanted to share with you. There are a bunch of stories like that too. But anyways, time is a little bit late. We're going to go talk about something else. Guys, in the beginning of the Parsha, if you have any questions, ask me now before I go to the beginning. I'm going to ask you, please, at the beginning of the Parsha, look at it in a mature way. What the Parsha talks about, honestly, is something that is very hard to relate to. Because thank God we don't live in such a situation. We all know that you're supposed to get married to a Jewish person, right? Jewish boy, Jewish girl. If they're not, so then there are sometimes certain ways conversion. If they do it actually according to halacha. So the Torah talks about a very weird situation. Let's say if the Jews go to a war. Please do not get turned off from this. Look at the positive side of it. They go to a war. Soldiers are in the war. Now, in the war, the way they used to distract soldiers, at least in the olden days, I don't know about today, they would send their daughters or the girls into the war in a very, very beautiful dress and look to distract the soldiers. So the Torah says, imagine the Jews go to a war, the expanding land of Israel. And then during the war, one of these soldiers sees a very, very beautiful girl. Now, going back in times of the Torah, everybody else is an idol worshiper. It's not like today that most people believe in God. Now, the soldier falls in love with this girl because she's very beautiful. The Torah calls it Eshet Yefatoar, extremely beautiful woman. So now, from one side, he wants to marry her. If the Torah would say you're not allowed to marry this girl, so this poor soldier, he has craziness in his head, he can't concentrate on the war. From the other side, the Torah can't say go marry somebody who's non-Jewish. So here the Torah says, well, you want to marry her, you could marry her. But you got to wait a month. So after the war is over, brings the girl to the house. Again, please don't get turned off from these weird stuff that we see. She has to sit in his house and she has to shave her head. So she looks very ugly. And then she can't really manicure her nails. It has to grow without putting anything on it. And then you have to put the ugliest clothes on her. So the Torah hopes after a month, when you walk into your house, you see how ugly she is, so you're not going to marry the girl. Right? Then afterwards, the Torah says, what happens if a guy marries a woman and hates the woman? What's the law of that? So here Rashi says this teaches us that if somebody marries a girl only based on the beauty, but not on the character trait, so then they might end up hating each other because there's no base to it. But what do we learn from these people? You see what happens in the Western world. The way, in the olden days, how did the marriages happen? It happened to me like that too. You have a matchmaker, right? And then the guy goes to a matchmaker. I'm this type of a guy. I'm looking for such a type of a girl. And then you want to get married. Now you have it in the internet, right? The guy says what kind of a girl he wants. The girl says what kind of a guy she wants. Anyways, in our days, works differently. You go to parties, and then you see a certain girl. Look how cute she is. Oh, look at a handsome guy. He has a six-pack, I always tell people I have 15 packs because I'm fat. Right? But anyways, I'm saying he's a very cute person. Let's go out. Let's see what's going to happen. So the excitement is there. I don't even know the person yet. Just she's beautiful, he's handsome, and then you go out and everything is working. And you might get actually emotionally attached. Then after 3 months, something happens. If something comes out of the closet, oh my gosh, I can't marry this person. And then you have the upsetness, as you said, slang language, the hangover. Right? That honestly, it's very, very troublesome. Even when I went out, let's say, when I was in Yeshiva, I never saw any girls, honestly. That's why we had no attraction problems. I never had it because I never saw a girl in my life. In the Yeshiva, I always tell you, the only girl was a 60-year-old secretary. That didn't attract us, So honestly, we have no attraction problems. Today, you have a serious problem. You see so many beautiful things. Nothing attracts. So anyways, the first time I went out, I went out with a certain girl for 2 weeks, and we were really almost there to get engaged. Then when she found out that I want to work for the Persian community, she was an American girl. She was afraid. You're going to be in the Persian community. You're going to speak Persian. I don't speak the language. There's going to be a separation between us. And then it's going to end up in a divorce, whatever. It was like crazy stuff. Like she was a psychologist. So anyways, she broke it up at the end. I know even there was no real attachment. We just dated 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But again, there was a hangover for 2 weeks, even though there was no attachment. But only took 2 weeks to get out of it. So could you imagine if we have these attachments and we don't know the girl at all, and then afterwards it breaks up? Or sometimes because really the beauty attracts us so much that we are blinded in so many negative things that person has. And then we say everything's going to work out, don't worry about it. We end up getting married, and after 6 months we end up in a divorce. So the Torah tells us, do not let the physical look fool you. This is not marriage material. If the boy or the girl have all the other good things and they're beautiful, they're handsome, then it's fantastic. The beauty is worth a lot. But only if it's, in addition to the inside beauty. But if the only thing that a person has is only the handsomeness or the six-pack or the beauty, really it's very, very empty, very shallow. And it's not going to end up to be good. At least you have to go through a lot of, change. You really have to work on yourself to actually make it happen. So this is one of the places in the Torah that we see. Do not be infatuated. You don't have to be infatuated in the beginning. It has to be basic attraction. And then if you see that the love will grow, continue going that way.
So, question, kind of like, I wonder how the Torah, or I guess Judaism in general, thinks about this. So, let's say you have someone whose, mom isn't Jewish, but they hold all the customs. They're very, they consider themselves ethnically and, socially Jewish. They consider
They grew up like a Jew, but the mother is not Jewish.
Yes, right. And then you have someone who's 100% Jewish, but doesn't practice at all, has tattoos,
So what's your question?
So the question is, which one does the Torah say you should choose? I'm not saying I'm in the situation, but hypothetically, let's just say a man is of that age, he's choosing between two women, not necessarily for marriage, but to take seriously. Which one should he choose in that scenario based on this?
Honestly, you can't give a straight answer because every situation is different. But I'm going to give you an answer in a different way. There was actually a certain person that the father was Jewish, the mother wasn't. But she thought she was Jewish all the time. And then when she wanted to get married, it actually came out that they found that the mother is not Jewish, all these things. So they actually spoke to the Rebbe one time about this. So again, to come and say, oh, because your mom is not Jewish, you're not Jewish, will break the person. So one of the things that the Rebbe said, it's a very, very important thing. Again, that everybody has a different soul, saying Jewish soul is a Jewish soul, and his job is to be a Jewish person. A Muslim has a different type of a soul, and he's supposed to live like a Muslim. A Christian has a Christian soul, right? Everybody's essence is different. So then let's say if somebody's born from a Jewish mom, she's Jewish. What happens to the person that converts? So according to Kabbalah, he had a Jewish soul, even before he or she converted. Sometimes certain souls have to go the crooked way to become a Jew. Don't ask me why. God has his reasons. Right? So somebody's born straight Jewish, somebody, the soul somehow is connected to a non-Jewish person. And then later on, when he converts, the Jewish soul actually enters the body completely. It's not just, transcendent, so to speak. That's a fancy word for it. So now what happens if they don't do the proper conversion? So I don't know if she's Jewish or not. Maybe she's not. Me being a limited person, the only way that I could know is if actually they go through the conversion. So I'm not going to come and say your mother is not Jewish, you're not Jewish. If the girl or the boy were actually raised as a Jew, all I can say I really don't know. But the only way that I could be convinced that you're 100% Jewish is if you're going to do the Orthodox conversion. Now, who should he choose? Obviously, it's always better to marry a Jewish person first. And I tell you why. Because every marriage is a risk, right? Doctors say, therapists say, two people that had two different types of lifestyles, they lived in two different houses, they live under the same roof, inevitably they will have disagreements. I didn't say fights. They could have nice disagreements because you're two different people. Even though they're both Jewish, and let's say they're both Orthodox, and they both belong to the same sect of Judaism, I'm saying, the Hasidic, not Hasidic. Nevertheless, because they grew up in two different houses, there are many, many disagreements. If somebody who's not even born Jewish or whatever, didn't have the Jewish thing, so the risk is a lot greater. But again, there are some times that, somebody gets to a certain age, cannot find a Jewish girl, and then there's a boy or girl that are willing to convert. So as long as the boy is not a Kohen, there are some times that in America they allow it. But you really have to judge every case separately. Again, I don't do conversion myself. But the RCC or Rabbi Block that they do the conversion, sometimes they ask me to be a coaching rabbi. Not often. Only I've done it 3 times. These, 30 years that I'm a rabbi here, I've only done it 3 times. And whatever, out of those marriages that happened, honestly, those 3 are successful. They're religious, they keep Shabbat, the kids go to Jewish school. Sometimes it works, but obviously it's a bigger risk. So you got to really think about it before you do it. All right? But again, your first choice is somebody who's more compatible. Anyway, so that was one thing that I wanted to share with you. Another thing that I wanted to share with you people is the concept. Is it too late? So maybe another 10 minutes? We're going to talk about the concept of Hakarat HaTov, that we have to actually show our gratitude to somebody else. In the Torah says, in the olden days, the Egyptians were Egyptians. Today, the whole world is mixed up. We don't really know who's who. So anybody that converts, what I'm saying, as long as they do proper conversion, you accept them because they come from the majority of the world. But when the Egyptians lived in Egypt, before the whole world was confused, there was a king, his name was Sancheriv. He was the king of Assyria. He came and he conquered the entire Middle East and he moved people around. So they shouldn't be able to rebel against him. So really now the Egyptians are not the same Egyptians, and they're not the same, they're all mixed up. The Torah says even though the Egyptians hurt us, they made us enslaved. In the olden days, if an Egyptian converted, he would have to marry a convert. Second generation marry a convert. Third generation could marry a Jewish person. So the Torah says why? These people are the ones that made the Jews suffer a lot. So the Torah says because when you were in need, when there was famine in the world, they actually gave us shelter in Egypt during the time of Yosef. So you have to show your gratitude. If they convert, even though they hurt us, you have to accept it. Interesting. And then actually the Torah says if somebody doesn't have gratitude, they cannot marry into a Jewish girl. I think I spoke about it many times. The two nations that they cannot marry a Jewish girl, even if they convert, is the nation of Ammon and Moab. The Torah says even if they convert to Judaism, for the rest of their lives, they have to marry converts. They cannot marry Jews. Again, these two nations don't exist. Everybody's mixed up. So once anybody converts, they could marry anybody they want, right? Except if a girl converts, cannot marry a Kohen. She could marry a regular person, a regular Jew, and then the child could marry a Kohen. No problem at all. Okay, so anyways, what happens is, why can't the Ammon and Moab marry a Jewish girl? So the Torah gives the weirdest reason. Because they didn't bring for the Jews water and bread when they came out of Egypt. They didn't offer us water and bread. I have a question. Any other nation gave us water and bread? Why is God picking on these two nations? No other nation brought us water and bread, so God is picking on them. So here the Ramban explains, because Ammon and Moab come from Lot. Lot was a nephew of Abraham our father. They lived in the city of Sodom, right? Lot lived in the city of Sodom. And really when Sodom got destroyed, so Lot and his two daughters and his wife were supposed to die too. But God didn't want Abraham, to suffer, losing a nephew, and a family. So because of Abraham's merit, they got saved. And the nation of Ammon and Moab come from the daughters of Lot. So they really owe their lives to Abraham. So now 400 years later, that was Abraham. 400 years later, Jews are coming out of Egypt. So the Torah says these two nations, to show their gratitude, they should have brought bread and water for the Jews, knowing that they were tired leaving Egypt on foot. Other nations don't owe anything to Abraham, but these two do. So the Ramban says we see here the concept of gratitude. It's not only to the person, not only to Abraham, his kids, 400 years later. You have to show the gratitude. Otherwise, there's a question if you're Jewish or not. So definitely that's a very great lesson for all of us. We have gratitude to many, many things. Number one, our gratitude is to God. No question. We have to show our gratitude to God. Number two, our gratitude is to our parents, to our siblings. We actually have gratitude to every human being in the world. In general. There might be some exceptions. What's the reason? As you know, the Gemara says that the world is judged based on the majority of actions. If the majority of the world is good deeds, it's going to be a good year. If God forbid is a bad, majority is evil, it's going to be a bad year, right? Now the Gemara says that Jewish people, even the most empty one, is full of mitzvot like a pomegranate. You all have a lot of mitzvot. So maybe your mitzvah, and the Rambam says you have to look at the world 50-50. 50% good deeds, 50% bad deeds. Why? So if I have a chance to do a mitzvah, I'll grab it. Because the world is 50-50. If I do another mitzvah, it comes out to be more than 50. When a sin comes, I'm not going to do it. Because if I'll do it, then the majority of the sins will come over 50. So always look at the world 50-50. So why do we have a blessed year? Because of the mitzvah that you did, and you did, and you did. The mitzvah that you did actually brings the scale of goodness, stronger, and we have a good year. So aren't we supposed to show our gratitude to everybody? Because of the good deed of every person. We have a wonderful year. With this to actually explain what the Baal Shem Tov says, loving of a fellow Jew goes even to a Jew that you don't know. How can I love somebody that I don't know? Really, it doesn't make sense. So here the Rabbi explains the reason is because you benefited from him. His good deeds benefited everybody. That the world should be on the scale of good deeds, and you have a good year. So, anyways, Mount Avelu, Rosh Hashanah is coming. If you want to have a good year, obviously, right? We want God to give us a very positive look and give us a good year. Our job is to look at every other human being with positive eyes. We're going to look at positively at you, so God is going to look at our positive things. Everybody's going to have a wonderful year, people. Sorry, I'm not going to be here for the next 2 weeks. Please pray for us that the mission will go good in Russia, God willing. Bezrat Hashem. Amen. Okay, guys, is Schnitzel open? Because I don't. Bezrat Hashem. ما الان داریم میریم. ما داریم در رو میبندیم. No, don't worry about it.
انگلیس‌ها باهوش‌ترین، نابغه‌ترین، پدرسوخته‌ترین. لطفاً شیرینی نخور.